So we need to review natural physiological, but, we put the alignment of current units and the rules in there. We can read over that, because you guys are gonna meet, possibly meet tomorrow to go over it, just reviewing, and then.
Sammy, this is Rebecca. I just the sound just came back on, but I was just gonna, before we went on to that portion of it, I was gonna ask you, or ask the board if what they thought about us just adding in the radio frequency microneedling in with C to for confusion, so we avoid confusion. And that's mainly because of the fact that the CAE board has not defined wounding or ablative. So it would be hard for somebody to define whether piercing the epidermis would be considered wounding or ablative. So that would just take care of that problem if we added that in with the C or RF microneedling.
That's up for discussion.
Sorry, I can barely hear you.
This is Rachel.
Sorry.
This is Rachel Anthony. I was under the impression that radio frequency was already in our scope. Am I incorrect, or am I believe we already have that?
You're correct that it is in our scope. However, we have not defined wounding or ablative. And without legal advice, it'd be hard to know whether or not wounding or ablative means piercing the epidermis. So that's why if we stick it in there under C, it kind of solves that problem without us having to define wounding or ablative, which will help us in the future. Because RF microneedling is different MOA than just radio frequency or microneedling.
Yeah, I think it's just a quick insert of RF needling, and I think Rebecca's concern is just that it's a nice amount of, it's stronger and has a little more of that ablative component, even though it's just a fractionated amount. So if we're going to list things like derma rolling and things like that, RF needling is one of our primary procedures, and it does have a little bit more of a kick. So I think the reason she's asking is just to make sure that we're clear that will always make the list. Is that correct, Rebecca?
Yes.
And even without defining wounds, the advanced aesthetics definition has specifically the advanced exhibition may perform advanced non-related aesthetic procedures that go beyond the epidermis. So without even defining wounds, this rule says, yes, just to clarify. But
Do
yeah,
we want to add? Yeah, I think adding it will further assist any questions or concerns.
so we can go actual position back. Okay. There it is. We walk through it. Pretty short. Okay, so, so this definition is defining natural physiological effects, which is part of 690.005.12 A and B, which is mechanical, and mechanical or electrical apparatus or appliances or devices include, but not limited to, galvanic current, high frequency, microcurrent, LED, the microdermabrasion that does not penetrate beyond the epidermis, except for natural physiological effects. So this definition is defining that part of that one. That's why it says 5A and 12B. 5A is the aesthetics definition. So not be penetrate beyond the epidermis, except for natural physiological effects, for skin or facial care practices formed on the human body, the face, purpose of keeping the skin of the human body healthy and attractive. Cleansing, stimulating, manipulating, exfoliating, applying lotions and cream stuff. Pretty much repeats the fact. Part of 690.05. Natural physiological effects means something naturally produced by or that follows immediately from and in accordance with a person's normal biological function. Epidermis means the outermost layer of the skin. The epidermis does not include any layers of the skin below the epidermis, including but not limited to the dermis and muscle. 4 is an esthetician may not use a mechanical or electrical apparatus, appliance, or device beyond the epidermis. An esthetician is presumed to be using a mechanical or electrical apparatus, appliance, or device below the epidermis when the esthetician exfoliates the skin below the epidermal layer. The esthetician destroys, damages, or removes dermis or muscle. An esthetician using mechanical or electrical apparatus, appliance, or device can only use it within the epidermis. Only the client's body's own natural physiological effects from the esthetician's use of mechanical or electrical apparatus, appliance, or device within the clinical client's epidermis. Skin layers can go deeper than the epidermis. For example, an esthetician can use microcurrent to stimulate the skin within the epidermis. Any increased cellular metabolism, activity, or exchange below the epidermis of stimulating the epidermal skin would be the natural physiological effects from the use of the aesthetics device. That is a mouthful. That's the end. David.
David Howe. Two things stand out for me on this. First thing is number 2, natural physiological effects means something. I don't know if I like the word something. It means something naturally produced by, I assume when you say something that would refer to a natural biological response to some procedure that follows immediately from in accordance with the person's normal biological functioning. I think trying to find something, give it a little context would be helpful. The other part would be, and I don't know, I had to read this 3 times before I understood what it was really saying. Under 5, when it talks about second sentence, only the client's body's own natural physiological effects on the esthetician use of mechanical electrical device within the client's epidural skin layer can go deeper than the epidermis. That part about can go deeper than the epidermis. I realize what you're saying is that the body's response can go into the epidermis, not the procedure itself. But grammatically, I don't know if there's a better way to say that. To me, it doesn't stand out clear. Am I the only one reading it? I don't know. I don't know if it's a matter of moving, can go deeper than the epidermis somewhere else in that sentence. But to end with that, it kind of, to me, is confusing.
Christie, would you say could create a response deeper than the epidermis?
Something like that,
Is that
yes.
what you would say?
Yes.
That one or two.
Then the client said, "John,
We're right at the page break. I think that's one of the things that's driving us up.
so Chrissy, what did you just say?
Well, I just was thinking, within the client's epidermal skin layer. And create a response that goes deeper. A natural, a natural response.
That
That,
goes deeper than the epidermis, yes. To me, that would make it a little more clear. Anybody else?
I agree.
I like what David said, again, this first. Can you see that?
What?
I think she said your first suggestion.
I think it's for, this is Chelsea, I think it's first suggestion was
Oh, number
pertaining to number 2. In clarifying
Yeah.
something
Number 5.
with number 5.
How do you just read it up?
Well, I think what Christie was suggesting gets to more specificity. And she was just altering the very last segment of that sentence to say, again, what was your wording? That you hit it.
could create a response, or could create a natural response.
That goes deeper into the epidermis. Yeah. You capture that? So
Where did you want that put?
it's going to replace the last segment of the sentence that's at the second page top, where it's a comma, can go deeper than the epidermis. She would replace can go deeper with the epidermis and then can create a natural response that goes into the epidermis. Period.
So delete can go deeper than the epidermis.
And replace it with can create a natural body response that goes deeper into the epidermis,
Deeper than the.
deeper down the.
Keyword.
Right. You good with that? You don't like that?
I'm making sure I got it all. Actually, would be deeper than the epidermis.
And then the other one, number 2, again, I'm just throwing this, if people don't agree, that's great, that's fine. But number 2, this part about means something. Something naturally produced by, I would suggest means,
The natural biological response.
yes, a natural biological response produced by, or that follows immediately from, then continue.
But now it doesn't. Yeah.
think you had the word up there on your screen. It means a natural biological response produced by or that follows. Yeah, there you go.
Go ahead, Rebecca, or Tracy.
Yeah, just Tracy, back to the number 5. It feels a little repetitive when it says at the beginning of that sentence, the finds on body's natural physiological effects, and then for us to repeat that statement again at the end. So I don't know if we can shorten it up a little bit with like, just starting it, something along the lines of the esthetician's use of mechanical or electrical apparatus, and then continue on with the sentence as they suggest. Yeah, just sticking up to it.
You're talking about starting it only or?
Yeah, so move something
Within.
I mean, it just starts with the esthetician's use of. In their client's bodies, naturally physiological effects from all be removed. Right.
Good. Good.
Thank you, Chelsea.
Starting here.
That's one thing. Yes.
I mean,
I don't think you need only though, I think it just starts, esthetician's use.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
This is Chelsea, this might be picking out wording, but do we want can create? That, or may create? So like may create a natural body response that may go deeper than the epidermis. It's, yeah.
That's an response. Yeah. Versus-
Go ahead, Rebecca.
Yeah.
Sorry, my hand wasn't really up. I was just wondering how an esthetician could destroy muscle, but thought that was interesting.
That's what she said.
What did she say?
It sounded odd.
Stemmed from the conversation about. There. Well, it stemmed from the conversation during the rack about microcurrent and being able to track the muscle. But in twitch and flutter and this and that, so this was the language, which is like, can't intentionally go to me. Natural physiological set, make twitch.
It's the word remove, I think, that like contracting the muscle or stimulating the muscle. I think it's the word remove is, it's stuck out to me as well, like. I don't know that we're ever in atrophy or. That's in dermabrasion.
But you could remove the germs.
Right.
Absolutely, maybe you.
Affects the muscle, like. Removes dermis or affects the muscle.
What if we just struck the term removes? Because I don't think there's ever gonna be a time where an esthetician is gonna remove dermis or muscle by way of a physiological effect.
David, or do any of your procedures remove them? Any of them? Well, I'm saying if they're done, no, I'm saying if they're done appropriately.
You. Man handle it. I mean. The dermis? And the microdermabrasion?
She's not. If they went through the. Yes.
Sammy, you may want to strike over too.
Right. Like, the intent of the service, not if you.
What is
that program?
So destroys organs, just dermis harms.
Yeah, so I think leaving destroys or damages, would be fair to either, so if the removing, you're not. Remove anything.
So we could just strike the word or as well.
Well, I was just asking, like, even if used in any apparatus or machine used in the wrong way, or too often or too much, could that still remove it? Or make it atrophy or something like that? Either one of those? Like even, I was just trying to play devil's advocate, used in the wrong way or too much, if it could happen.
Not the muscle.
Not the muscle.
But the dermis,
If you remove the dermis like they use the microdermabrasion.
She said, sure.
It's like you really try.
I mean, you could combine that, this is Tracy, you could combine that with a esthetician that exfoliates or removes the skin below the epidermal layer. Okay.
Yeah, that's good.
Like muscles, get 3 levels to get there, so.
Right.
And this is just used to define below the epidermis.
Right.
If there's any other changes? No.
Rebecca, Kimberly, any other changes?
Nope, not for Rebecca.
Great. And if you want to, you can, I would suggest just voting on each board, vote on all 3 definitions as amended. Oops. No. First, yeah,
Any follow people on?
I move to vote, this is Chelsea Westcott, I move to vote on all three. Of the rule.
Advanced studies provide natural physiological effect with the methods.
With amendments, yes.
Are you voting to approve?
I am.
You should make
I
it.
was making an interim move, vote to approve.
Should vote.
Okay.
I second the motion. I, Beatrice Van Section, second the motion.
I'll call roll. Tracy Brumbo, yay. Jamie Farren,
Yay.
Beatrice Van,
Yay.
Chelsea Westcott.
Yay. Advanced Aesthetic Board, we have a motion. To approve. And Jamie, can you just clarify, we're approving all three? Motion to approve all three changes. Give a second. I originally Anthony second motion. Right, take a vote. Christina, yes. Rebecca Covey,
Yes.
Jamie O'Neill. Yes. Kimberly Morris.
Yes.
Kimberly. Yes.
Yes.
Rachel Anthony.
Yes.
At least you can still enjoy the sun.
Yeah.
Did everyone vote?
Yes.
Yes, motion passed.
Yes, we pass it.
That motion was to approve definition of aesthetics device, advanced aesthetics device, and natural physiological effects with amendments. Yes, just repeat. Okay, so moving on, we have to end at 4, so you can 15 minutes. Fiscal impacts. So I will tell you what I already have, which is, if an estimate is, so we've now said microneedling is not in. So if a regular esthetician has to go back to an advanced aesthetic school, then they have to pay for schooling. If, and since there's a limited number of schools, but they have to travel, or live in an apartment, or the expenses, with their job, all those things. Or if they decided not to, then they wouldn't have that business to, for their income, and they would have wasted money on the device. So there's that. There is, fiscal impact to HLO, because if there are rules, we can maintain them. That's what the inspection, so there might be, some changes with that, so just kind of all the administrative things we do. If the esthetician does go back to school to the advanced aesthetics, it might be passing the cost back to the consumer. That's what this impact. So I kind of give you some ideas, but use the more.
Sammy, it's hard for me to hear, but it's not possible then in any way for the CE board to add an additional line item on here stating that, up to a certain depth or something, the CE could perform microneedling if they got their bloodborne and had training if they were already providing it. I just think it's just we're gonna end up having a lot of people have an issue with this if they've been providing it for, over 10 years or more. And they have to go back to school. There's no possible way for the CE, schools to just add this piece on and have them get their bloodborne and then just make it, more superficial in depth as far as what they're doing or for topical absorption or something like that.
Complicated question. So, the cosmetology board couldn't require that schools teach anything because higher education coordinating commission determines that. I think it's possible that you could say, do bloodborne pathogens, you could do that and just add to the application requirements. that's easy enough. We do that with tattooing, restorative therapy, it's all like. If you want them to keep it updated, you can put it in. But if you want to have like an extra layer of training, you have to determine first, is microneedling, all this list of things in the school practice, which today you propose that it's not. But if you decided that it was, then you could consider putting some education parameters around it. So maybe.
I just think it might solve a bigger issue that is gonna come up on account of this after we do this. If there is a large portion of estheticians, I know back in, gosh, it was like 2010, they allowed microneedling and micro rollers and different things. And I don't think it would be that hard to require bloodborne pathogens and then give them some supervision or give them some rules behind what they can do and what they can't do. But I mean, that would be up to the CE board. And if this, I know the schools seem to be more, they seem concerned that that would be hard for them to accomplish. But we can just let it go to comments and see what happens too, and see if, we take it from there and what the public comments, what comes in. I just do worry a little bit about all those people that are providing it right now in the aesthetic scope of practice, that already that have their whole businesses wrapped around it, and what kind of hardship that's gonna put on them.
This is Rachel Anthony, and I have a bigger concern over the public health of people who are not well educated in doing micropenning. It is a very big issue as far as the infection and, I mean, just level of vulnerability we're putting our patients at. And I'm not sure how long they have been doing it, and I can have concern for their business as well. I have bigger concern for the people who do not know that they are not well educated. And it's part of our jobs to make sure that we make that clear to the public as well.
Oh, please.
But there is something in between that I feel like we need to understand both sides of this, and we have obligations to both sides.
I mean, I offered personally, many years ago, I offered microneedling as an esthetician, and I felt like I took the classes and courses to be safe. The one thing I noticed was that the board was allowing them to sterilize their needles and reuse them. And I brought that to the board's attention at the time. That was not going to be okay. That was completely unsafe. So I think if an esthetician is trained effectively in bloodborne and they know that they cannot reuse needles and they're limited to certain depth, I think that they're already doing it, and the clients would then be safe. But I think it would be up to the school to be able to know whether they could handle that, or if they even want to add that to this aesthetic scope, because they're stating in here that they can't go past the epidermis or penetrate beyond the epidermis. So you guys would have to write it in there differently. And I don't know if that's possible. Or it sounds like you may not want to do it either.
I think we voted on the languaging for the lodging that came down from the RAC, and for now, the laws regarding that, and I think that we can address that as things come up, but I think that for now, it was unanimous that that was the way we move forward at this time.
And this is Beatrice Van, and I thought that from my understanding of the statute was that that it's already in statute that as standard estheticians, we cannot go below the epidermis. So that can't be changed, period, from my understanding, because it is in statute. So as we voted today, that's what we were basing it on, black and white. Logically, can we actually do this procedure that will stay on the epidermis regardless of penetration or depth? And so I think that was how we ruled up safety of the consumer, the safety of the practitioner, and the licensing, going back to insurance being properly trained, but it was really in the verbiage of, is this in statute of epidermis, and the epidermis can't change. And that's.
Yeah, that makes
my
sense. If that's,
understanding of it.
yeah,
That
if
is-
the statute is what's limiting it and nothing but the statute, then that totally makes sense to me. I was under the impression from what Sammy said that possibly it could be changed. So that's why I was asking.
It's possible, but there is some
You can-
subjectivity on if microneedling goes below the epidermis. I have no idea. But today, both boards unanimously voted that it does. They moved it over to advanced studies. You want to change your.
Oh my
vote,
gosh.
Say that it doesn't, you could do that too.
You're wrong.
And then you.
So were we,
Okay,
David, you're about fiscal impact, racial
yes,
equity here?
thank you.
Okay.
So I've kind of given you a rundown. I'm just noting that, estheticians and estheticians are, and women in small businesses, manufacturing economically, other costs, HLO, the legal costs, the immersion, education, the new definition, reliance on 1970, expanded to the practice of recitations by listing devices that estheticians were using before 2021, like the current immigration, so that could. Financial impact due to. So those are kind of one of the eight that the ice drop and that the reps. There's some real ones.
Are you asking a question or what?
I'm asking you to tell me if there are other physical impacts I've missed.
Is this the appropriate time to ask for public or interested parties' feedback during the last 5 minutes?
Do you have any physical impact you want to tell me about? Nope.
I'm here.
Okay, you guys can take public comment. I think there's notice for each of you to read it, but yes, thank you.
Hello?
At this time- We're here.
Keep talking.
At this time, the Board of Cosmetology will hear public interested parties' feedback. Members of the public, this meeting is being held on MST's video conference and is being recorded. The recording will be posted to the internet for public viewing. Please be sure to mute your microphone and unmute only when you've been recognized. Once recognized, please state your name and affiliation to the board for the record.
And finally, just make the same comment for the advanced aesthetic board so we can open up the comments. At this time, the Board of Certified Advanced Estheticians will hear public interested parties' feedback. Members of the public, this meeting is being held by MST's video conference and it's being recorded. The recording will be posted to the internet for public viewing. Please be sure to mute your microphone and unmute only when you've been recognized. Once recognized, please state your name and affiliation to the board.
Whitney there.
Hi, Whitney Barrier. I want to thank you all for today. It's a lot of work. I just wanted to make a comment about the microneedling. I'm not sure in the long term where we're gonna head, but I can kind of see where Carol wants us to go. I'll just say I'm a business owner, and within the last few years, it has been made statements from the board, from advanced meetings, from asking that we can work within the epidermis, so that means that we can microneedle and then nanoneedle. And so my business provides that. I have one spa that is all basic. Okay, can you hear me better? I just want to understand that on the ground floor, what we've been told in all the research that I do, it's not true just because you use a needle, that means it goes beyond the epidermis. There's length involved.
And we're already able to do extractions, which are needles. So why are we able to do that, but we can't do a nanoneedle? We've been told over and over that as long as we stay within the epidermis, it's okay. So on a personal level, I invested in a $7,000 machine that is a nanoneedle machine. I knew it was really safe. I then had to pay for extra training for all of my staff. We now have people on packages that we have to satisfy, or we have to provide a refund. There is no pinpoint bleeding, there is no numbing necessary because that level of depth is so shallow. And, you know, I guess what I ask is that we make a good plan, because all of, what if I hire new people? I don't have any advance on that staff. So if I want to use that device and continue to satisfy my clients, I'm going to need to change my staff, at least one or two of them. And I don't have enough room in my current staff to add one. I would need to lay some people off. There's no infection. Typically with that kind of depth, you can do it a lot, like, you know, once a week or even every few days, because there's no bleeding, just saying the actual regular microneedling is. And the point of nano is actually for serum infusion, which is like what I thought we were able to do as esthetician. It's for lotion, it's for serum infusion. It's actually not for like fixing scars or deep collagen induction. That's actually not the point of it. And so I would just love to understand what the plan is. What is my timeline as a business owner to make those changes if that's necessary, and to be realistic, because as I said, they haven't had a lot of issues and reports of major injuries. So I think we're talking a little bit different things. Think of diabetes.
But anyway, just to think about what's really going on in our community, I have real girls working for me, and we have been told thus far we can. It's not like we made that assumption. So that's where I just want us to be thinking about at least a long-term plan of transitioning businesses. We're gonna have to transition our employees, our devices, and keep these. To do it right, you have to spend the right kind of money. It's not cheap. Just to think about.
No, thank you, Tracy, because we're not in advanced education.
Can I ask her a question?
Sure.
Who told you that what agency or who told you that you were allowed to do that service?
Then you're needling.
Yeah.
I work with a board that's called HLO. I've talked to other professors in business. I know at Spectrum, they're teaching nano as part of the curriculum, because when I interview girls, part of their list of their curriculum, it's what they're able to do, and they're learning it in school. So that's where I'm getting.
So with, like, I guess my biggest question is, this is Beatrice Van, like nanofacial and nano needling, like, so there are two different devices. There is a pen that uses needles to pen it to, like, so I think that goes back to devices. There are nanofacials that doesn't have needles, that they're pyramids that you're using for product absorption. So maybe at the school, we do nanofacial, but we don't use needles in standards. They are pyramids that are that are creating infusion for better product absorption. So it goes back to it being superficial. So I don't know, I guess if goes back to, are we using needles, or what type of tips are we using for the treatments? But I completely hear you, Whitney. Like
David Howe here. I'm not so sure there is an issue. I mean, if you go back to the definitions that everybody agreed to, under aesthetics definition device, it simply says an esthetician limited performing service with mechanical or electric apparatus, appliance device that do not penetrate beyond the epidermis. And if you're suggesting your device doesn't go beyond the epidermis, regardless of what you call it, that would fall, it seems, in the definition of aesthetics. Versus advanced, it has a statement that an advanced esthetician may perform advanced non-ablative aesthetic procedures that go beyond the epidermis. So those two blanket statements, regardless of what you're labeling procedure, still, in my thinking, be compliant. Because that device, if you can prove it doesn't go beyond the epidermis, isn't that what the whole basis here was? That was the line.
Or shifted the line. Needling
channeling that.
Those are the procedures, you're right. So I don't know if we need to amend per se, language insertion. But, number one simply says, if it doesn't go below. No,
Well, when you,
Those are like some needles, though. It's a precisely plan, yeah, damn needles.
well, I think that,
There's needles in it.
right.
Not in it.
The standard, I think the discussion was though, that no one, or there was a statement made that all needle procedures go below the epidermis. And that was the basis for making that decision about certain kinds of procedures. So if in fact there are procedures that don't go beyond.
On a needle, it's still a puncturing tool. Still puncture. It just doesn't, that particular thing, but I mean, even if you have a needle, very, very small, it all is doing the same thing as creating the microchip. In a sense, but it's a level of depth and aggressiveness. I'm not saying we don't have to change it, I'm just saying that currently we've been told we can. And even our girls are coming in saying they're learning it at school and the nanofacials and things like that. We can use needles for extraction. And so obviously, I do think we're gonna have a little problem because I think a lot of people have been taking on this service as well.
Christina. Just for the sake of time, Beatrice, does the nano use a needle?
No.
So potentially the nano treatment, not using a needle, not penetrating past the epidermis would be completely legal right now as it stands.
is there a difference between individually?
Because the pen that we use is through BT Therapeutics and it is not a needle pen. It is a pyramid. There's no needle. It's flat. You do not believe there's no puncturing or nothing.
So that,
Well, there is
Would-
no puncturing.
Some robotic approach is almost like, it's still thinking it's microcurrent, galvanic, you're using ion taphoresis, you're using a electricity to
I agree that nano will be optional to people in that sense, and you can still get a nano needle. It don't puncture, so that's the thing, is that the mechanism itself, the micropuncture, which is what our definition that we decided on. So, I mean, that's just something to think about, it's just something to think about, and it's actually a very large, widely used add-on for a lot of basic estheticians to upgrade their facials. So, and it works really well, without actually going aggressively, and you're not gonna promise to keep that in part, it's not what you're doing. This is actually an absolute, skin treatment, it's just for the skin, just for, making skin glowy and dewy, that's really. And it's also without any effects. Is your without any? No, these are very small needles, or seriously, but it's not, but there's so many tests.
We're in public comment.
3 minutes per, it's on the agenda for public member. That's all right, and we're still 7 minutes over. Tracy had her hand up and then whoever's online, somebody online has a comment?
I'm on the line. Yes, Deborah, I'd like to speak, please.
Okay, 3 minutes.
I'm up?
Yes, we can hear you, yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I was on the RAC committee and we all voted that microneedling within the epidermis should stay within the scope of basic aesthetics. And there is, if you've trained with Dr. Lance Setterfield, who actually is the one that got microneedling popular in the United States, he teaches that you stay within the epidermis and you target the keratinocyte to stimulate the fibroblast, not the other way around. You shouldn't need to draw blood to get the results that you're after. And when I teach microneedling, I teach that we do not want to be in the dermis. It is clearly those people that are being more aggressive that think of this then as more of an advanced procedure. But when you are staying within the epidermis, you are doing it actually correctly with less inflammation, less problems. The state has not seen any issues with microneedling over the last several years with estheticians doing microneedling. I teach a hands-on course and teach safety, sanitation, what pre and post treatment looks like, and I have not had any issues with any of those basic estheticians doing microneedling. So those of you that say it has to be below the epidermis are actually very incorrect.
This is Christy now. Deborah, do you have I also have studied with Dr. Lance Sutterfield. Do you have a needle depth that you feel, because I know your experience, do you feel that it stays within the dermis, a certain needle length? Or the epidermis?
I
I'm sorry.
believe, well, you know, there's a certain amount, we have scalpels that we use when we dermaplane, and we are trusted because we have training to do what we're supposed to do with that tool. So being micromanaged by only being able to use a device that goes so far, to me seems, I mean, there's no way you're going to be able to find a device that is just epidermal, because there are people with thicker and thinner skin. And in a training, you learn to recognize what's a depth. If you are seeing any too much redness, or you're seeing any pinpoint bleeding whatsoever, then you know that you are not in the you're not in the epidermis, you're in the dermis, and you need to go shallow. And I teach all of my students to start at 0.25. So I would say if you're using a pin that has backflow protection, and you are trained, certainly with bloodborne pathogens, all that, even though I don't see blood, I have way more of a problem with advanced estheticians using PRP and smearing blood all over faces when they have biologics that they're using as a skincare product. So basic estheticians are performing it all over the state. When we wrote the bill, sorry, I need a drink. I'm in my car. When we wrote the bill, we intended for all devices that work within the epidermis not to be taken out of the scope of a basic esthetician. It is very hard to get new devices and new things to be able to make a living as a basic esthetician anymore. And by removing microneedling and doing some channeling or whatever you're calling it, is going to make it very difficult for estheticians, because microneedling and, you know, those are the procedures that people are asking for, and I see no reason. And I think the basic board should be protecting the right to practice of basic estheticians. That's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Other public comments?
Is there other comments from the phone? Steve? Other comments on NSPs from any public members? Noel? Denise, I see you. Okay. Great. You haven't consent. I don't know who 85123 is. The person I was just talking to. Okay, nothing good.
We're ready to adjourn. Board of Health meeting is adjourned at 4:12 p.m.
Leave your sign.
And the Board of Certified Advance meeting is adjourned at 4:12 p.m.